All right, this is going to be a homework walkthrough for chapter 6-1. We'll start with question 1 and see how we do. The Cheyenne Hotel in Big Sky, Montana has accumulated records of the total electrical cost of the hotel at the number of occupancy days over the last year. An occupancy day represents a room rented for 1 day. The hotel's business is highly seasonal, with peaks occurring during the ski season and the summer. So they give me all of this data, and they want me to use the high-low method to estimate the fixed cost of electricity per month and the variable cost of electricity per occupancy day. Do not round your intermediate calculations. Round your variable cost answer to 2 decimal places and fixed cost element answer to the nearest whole dollar amount. From here on forward in the semester, pay attention to the words in red because it tells you how they want the answer. And since your homework is checked by a computer, graded by a computer, it's really important to put it in how they're asking for, or the computer will mark it wrong. Okay, so I took my data here, right, from the book, and I put it into my Excel document so I can access these. The next thing I did was evaluated where my high and my low, right? So the definition of the high-low method is the rise over the run, or the cost, the high cost subtracted from the low cost. So let's get that one first. So my high cost minus my low cost. And then that's going to be divided by the units. So for this problem, it's occupancy days high minus the low occupancy days. So that's going to equal this minus this. And then on the bottom will be this. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Right, here's where I want it. Equals this minus this. Okay. So then I just divide the cost, the difference in the cost, divided by the difference in the occupancy days. And that gives me a variable cost of electricity of $2.70 per day. So that's the first part. Now, the fixed cost then would be the total cost minus the variable cost element. And so just for me, I'm going to pick my high. Just make sure whichever one you pick, right? This is the fixed cost. It's going to be the same no matter what month I pick. But make sure if you're picking the total cost for September, then for the variable portion, you're using the occupancy days for September times the variable cost. So I'm just gonna show you right here. So that would be equal to, there's my total cost. And then I'm going to subtract the occupancy days times that variable cost, the 270. Okay, so that means my fixed cost is going to be equal to that total cost minus the variable cost element, which for my problem, it's $950. So remember, you have different numbers, but the process is the same. So that's required 1. Required 2, what other factors in addition to occupancy days are likely to affect the variation in electrical costs from month to month? Now you're going to be doing this in the book where you're picking more than one answer, possibly. If you click the box once, it turns it into a check mark. If you click the box twice, then it leaves it blank. If you leave it as a question mark, it will be marked wrong. So for this one, things that are going to affect the variation in electricity cost. What is, if I do this, it's going to cost more money. So systematic factors like guests switching on and off fan lights. Well, okay, yes, because they're using more electricity. The number of days in a month. Yes, because it is by day. Income taxes paid on hotel income. That has absolutely nothing to do with electricity costs. Seasonal factors like winter or summer. Yes, because winter is colder, summer is warmer, so that can affect heating, air conditioning, all of that. Fixed salary paid to the hotel receptionist. She has nothing to do with the electricity cost, so no. So just those three. Okay. Question 2. And there was some question on how to do the chart in Excel. And so hopefully I'm going to be able to show you how to insert the chart and get it to show the equation that will have the answers in it for you. Okay, Bargain Rental Car offers rental cars in an off-airport location near a major tourist destination in California. Management would like to better understand the variable and fixed portions of its car washing costs. The company operates its own car wash facility in which each rental car that is returned is thoroughly cleaned before being released for rental to another customer. Management believes that the variable portion of its car washing costs relates to the number of rental returns. Accordingly, the following data have been compiled. So we have this list of information. We have the months, we have the rental returns, and we have the car wash cost. So the first thing you are going to want to do to get this to work is you've got to create that chart in Excel, in an Excel document, and input or copy over all of this data. So once you've got that copied over, you're going to highlight the numbers like that. You're going to click Insert, and you're going to do a scatter plot. So it's this a whole bunch of dots. And I want it to be this whole bunch of dots. So that's the scatter plot. Okay. Now I'm going to right click one of the dots. And I'm working on a regular computer. If you're on a Mac or an Apple, Google it because it's just a little bit different. But this is for a regular computer. So I have all these choices. I know the writing's tiny, but right here it says add trend line. So I'm going to add the trend line. It adds this line right here, and it opens up this. So make sure that linear is selected. And then second to the bottom, display the equation on the chart. That's where you're going to find your answers. Okay, so once I have that displayed, I can close this. Now, I'm old, and this equation is tiny. So I generally go to the home button and I increase the size of the font so I can read it. So all you had to do that is you just click on the formula and then go to the home button and change the font size if you need to make it bigger if you're old like me. Okay, so there's my least squares regression. I use Excel. It does all the math for me. It's awesome. So now in this, it says y equals 3.7742x plus 2465.7. So previously, every time we see this formula, the fixed portion is first and the variable portion is second. So as you're inputting information, the one without the x, that's your fixed cost per month. And my red lettering says round fixed cost to the nearest whole dollar amount and variable cost per unit to 2 decimal places. So again, be careful how you are inputting this. So mine is 2466, right? Because it's 0.7, so I round up that number right there. And then my variable is 3.77, right? Because rounding it, that's a 4, so it stays the same. One of the instructors showed us a way, if you're having trouble getting this chart to show, getting the equation to show on the chart for you, there is a function in Excel called line S. And I'm going to show you how to do that really quick. And this is the beginning of where there are multiple ways to get to the right answer. You use the one that makes sense to you. So equals LINEST, line S, parentheses. So you just want to make sure that you're doing the y-axis first. So the dollar amounts first. So I just simply select all of those dollar amounts, insert a comma, and then I select the rental returns. Close parentheses. And there's my numbers, right? So Excel is awesome. If you know the formulas and you know how to use them, it does all kinds of math for you. Get very comfortable with Excel. You will be much happier for the rest of the semester. Yeah, so there was your least squares regression. Okay, question 3. This one was a little confusing on mine, but I'll tell you why in a minute. Archer Company is a wholesaler of custom-built air conditioning units for commercial buildings. It gathered the following monthly data relating to its units shipped and total shipping expense. So again, I have my months, my units shipped, and my total shipping expense. Using the high-low method, so be really careful in watching what method they're asking for in this homework in particular. Estimate the cost formula for shipping expense. So again, I'm going to look here and here's my high, right? There's my highest unit and my highest cost. So I want to just select that. And then my low is right here, 2 units, $600. That's definitely the low. Okay, so I'm going to take an equals my highest cost minus my lowest cost. And then I'm going to equal my highest unit shipped minus my lowest unit shipped. Okay, so to get the variable shipping expense per month, per unit, I would simply take that 2,100 and divide it by the 7. So I get $300 per unit is my variable shipping expense. Now remember with the fixed, it's going to be the highest cost minus the highest units times the variable shipping. So I'm going to take equals my highest cost minus, open parentheses, my highest units times the variable. So I have my fixed portion. Whoops, that was not what I wanted. My fixed portion is going to be the difference between the total cost minus the variable. Then what's left over is the fixed, right? So close parentheses and enter, and I get $0 per month, which confused me. I looked at it 3 times, entered it in the book. It is correct. So as long as you're doing the highest cost minus the variable portion, which would be the highest units times the variable shipping, then you'll get your fixed shipping expense. And remember, your numbers are different than mine. So good luck. That is all for question 3. Question 4. It's one of those where you've got to think through it, right? I think we're the same company. but they just want to know what factors other than the number of units shipped are likely to affect the company's shipping expense. So obviously the weight, right? The different weight that will affect the shipping expense. Shipping is computed by how far it has to be shipped. So the distance traveled will also. Sales commissions, that's a selling cost, not a shipping expense. So that's not part of this. Trade discounts are also part of selling costs. So they are not part of shipping expense. And then express shipping to meet a deadline is also yes. Okay. Question 5. Nova companies' total overhead costs at various levels of activity are presented below. April, May, June, July, machine hours, total overhead costs. Assume that the total overhead costs above consist of utilities, supervisory salaries, and maintenance. The breakdown of those costs at 44,000 machine hour level of activity is, and then they tell me utilities, supervisory salary. So utilities is a variable, supervisory salaries is a fixed, maintenance is mixed, and a total overhead cost. So I'm going to point out something right here that they don't make apparent, but is important. So if you'll notice, this total overhead cost of 180,200, that is my May, right? Machine hours, there's my machine hours, 44,000, and there's my total overhead cost, 180,200. The other thing to note is in my example, May is my low. Okay, if we were doing high-low, May is my low. And so they have given me the breakdown of those total overhead costs. Okay. Nova Company's management wants to break down the maintenance cost into its variable and fixed cost elements. Estimate how much of the 250,700 overhead cost in July consisted of utilities and supervisory salaries. Think about the behavior of variable and fixed costs. Using the high-low method, estimate a cost formula of maintenance, and then express the company's total overhead in that formula and what total overhead costs would be expected at a machine activity level at 49,000. Okay, so let's start back up. Required 1, my machine hours are 44,000. So if I want to know my utilities variable cost per unit at this activity level, well, that's May, right? They gave me May. So here I put these numbers. They came right here. Remember, I explained to you that this is May. So I'm going to take my utilities cost, divide it by the machine hours for May, and that gives me my variable cost per unit for utilities. So figuring out for July. Well, they told me what the total overhead cost was in July, right? In that chart, right? Right here, they told me the total overhead cost. I just copied it down here and I marked that May is my low and July is my high. So I have my total. Let's see, supervisory salaries. If supervisory salaries is a fixed cost and it's 60,000 in May, then it's going to be 60,000 in July. So I have 2 of my 3 numbers that I need here. So I can figure out my utilities variable now because we figured out the variable cost per unit in May. And so that's going to be my variable cost per unit in July. So, or per machine hour, sorry, not per unit, per machine hour. I forgot what we were talking about here. So I'm going to take that variable cost and multiply it by the machine hours for July. And that gives me my July's variable cost. So now I can solve for what is my maintenance cost. And that's simply going to be the total minus the utilities minus the supervisory salary. And what's left over has to be my maintenance cost. Okay, that's nice. So that is required one. That's what we just figured out. Okay, required two. They want to know the high-low method, estimate a cost formula for maintenance in the form of y equals a plus bx. Okay, so high-low method, I take the cost, so my high cost. Oh wait, that's right. Let's see. Minus my low. Nope, I did wrong. I'm looking at the wrong numbers. Okay, hold on. Let me look at the question again. Using the high-low method, estimate a cost formula for the maintenance. Okay, so we're just looking at maintenance, not the total, not the totals. Okay, let's try that again. So just maintenance equals my high is July minus my low is May, and then the machine hours for July minus the machine hours for May. And so that is going to be my variable, right? It's going to be this one. So it's going to be equal to 37,500 divided by 30,000. So I come up with $1.25 for my variable. So I'm going to work with May on this one. So my variable maintenance for May then would equal that variable times May's machine hours. And I know the total maintenance for May right here was given to me way up above, right? That was part of this. So working backwards then equals total maintenance minus variable maintenance, and that's my fixed maintenance. So that goes right here in my formula. So that's required too. So now, let's see, what do they want? They want me to add up the variable costs. So now we're talking total overhead costs, right? Required two, we were just looking at maintenance. Now we're talking about total. So my variable cost per machine hour for utilities was that $1.10 we figured out way back at the beginning of required one. Supervisory salaries, that is just a fixed cost, right? So it's not a variable. And it's was 60,000 for me. And then maintenance variable, we just figured out in required two for me is that $1.25. And then the fixed portion is that 16,800. So that's how that will be filled out. Supervisory salaries is only fixed, so there's nothing under variable. Utilities cost is only variable, so there's nothing under fixed. Maintenance cost is both. There's a variable portion and a fixed portion, which we figured out in required two. And then the other part of this is simply putting those numbers into the formula. So my fixed total overhead cost is going to be the sum of those. And then my per machine hour variable for total overhead is going to be that one. So it's simply taking those totals and putting them into the boxes there. Now, required for then, what total overhead cost would you expect to be incurred at an activity level of 49,000 machine hours? Do not round intermediate calculations. So I typed my machine hours right here. So that is going to be equal to my fixed plus, open parentheses, my machine hours times the variable from required 3, close parentheses, for 191,950. Okay. Question 6. There's not a real good way for me to show you this one because I already did it in my book. But basically, you're just selecting one of the tools. And then, so my first one, I picked fall of last year. So I clicked on that. And then I looked at my chart and it said the number of sections offered was 7 and the total cost was $13.50. Now I know these lines are tiny, but if you click in the general vicinity, then over here it opens up a space where you can type in the numbers and make them exact because you want them to be exactly. So for mine, it would be exactly 7, and then in the other would be 13,500. And then you click save, and then you do the next one. Just make sure you're picking the right tool, right? The right dot with the right label for the right ones. And you just do that for each one of those. And every dot you place, click save after it. And making sure, again, that you use the right tool because they're all labeled for which ones they are. Okay, question 7. Professor John Morton has just been appointed chairperson of the financial department at Wesleyan University. In reviewing the department's cost records, Professor Morton has found the following total cost associated with Finance 101 over the last 5 terms. So we have the different terms, the number of sections that were offered, and the total cost. Professor Morton knows that there are some variable costs, such as amounts paid to graduate assistants associated with the course. He would like to have the variable and fixed costs separated for planning purposes. So, using the least squares regression method, estimate the variable cost per section and the total fixed cost per term for Finance 101 and express these estimates in the form of y equals a plus bx. So again, least squares regression, that's when you make the chart in Excel. Type it in or copy and paste just like it is in the book. Then you select the amounts, you insert a chart, a scatter plot, and you want the one that's just the dots. Then right click and add the trend line, and that opens this up. Make sure it's linear. And the second from the bottom is display the equation on the chart. And again, I'm old, so I'm going to increase my font size so I can see what my equation is. Okay, so now that, now that I have done that, the fixed cost per term, remember, that's the one that doesn't have the X. So mine's 3988. And then the one with the X is your variable cost per section. So 1366. Whoops. Oh. Right, because rounding that makes it 1366. Okay, and then again, they just want you to simply put those numbers into this formula. So my fixed is 39. Actually, I'm just gonna equals this one, and then my variable portion is right there. Just remembering where those go in the formulas. Now I'm going to give you the heads up. you need this formula to answer question 8. So question 8, I copied my formula right there from question 7. So I'm the same person, same data, right? I'm still Professor John Morton. But they've added this. Assume that because of the small number of sections offered during the winter term this year, Professor Morton will have to offer 10 sections, so my number is 10, of Finance 101 during the fall term. Compute the expected total cost for Finance 101. Round intermediate calculations and final answers to the nearest whole dollar amount. Okay, so fixed cost, that is that number in my equation, right? The one without the X. And then my variable cost is going to be equal to the number of sections, right? Mine was 10 times the variable portion. So there's my fixed and there's my variable. I believe the book adds the total. Okay, so 3B, required 3B, is a little tricky. I promise you this is the right answer. The prediction is out of the relevant range. So the relevant range is the amount of sections that they've offered that are shown in the data that he collected. And he's offering 10 sections. So for mine, 10 is not in this relevant range. So there could be an issue with that because it is more than the data, right? The information that he's collected. Good luck with your assignment.